John Robert Lee from St. Lucia, reading from A Map to the Door of No Return, selected passages. The door of no return is, of course, no place at all, but a metaphor for place. Ironically, or perhaps suitably, it is no one place, but a collection of places. Landfalls in Africa, where a castle was built, a house for slaves, une maison des esclaves, rude enough to disappear or elaborate, and vain enough to survive after centuries. A place where a certain set of transactions occurred, perhaps the most important of them being the transference of selves. The door of no return, real and metaphoric as some places are, mythic to those of us scattered in the Americas today. To have one's belonging lodged in a metaphor is voluptuous intrigue, to inhabit a trope, to be a kind of fiction. To live in the Black diaspora is, I think, to live as a fiction, a creation of empires and also self-creation. It is to be a being living inside and outside of herself. It is to apprehend the sign one makes, yet to be unable to escape it, except in radiant moments of ordinariness made like art. To be a fiction in search of its most resonant metaphor, then, is even more intriguing. So, I'm scouring maps of all kinds, the way that some fictions do, discursively, elliptically, trying to locate their own transferred selves. The door is a place, real, imaginary, and imagined, as islands and dark continents are. It is a place which exists or existed. The door out of which Africans were captured, loaded onto ships heading for the New World. It was the door of 1 million exits multiplied. It is a door many of us wish never existed. It is a door which makes the word door impossible and dangerous, cunning and disagreeable. There is the sense in the mind of not being here or there, of no way out or in, as if the door had set up its own reflection. Caught between the two, we live in the diaspora, in the sea in between. Imagining our ancestors stepping through these portals, one senses people stepping out into nothing. One senses a surreal place, an inexplicable space. One imagines people so stunned by the circumstances, so heartbroken as to refuse reality. Our inheritance in the diaspora is to live in this inexplicable space. That space is the measure of our ancestors' step through the door toward the ship. One is caught in the few feet in between. The frame of the doorway is the only space of true existence. For those of us today in the diaspora, this door exists as through a prism, distorted and shimmering. As through heat waves across a vast empty space, we see this door appearing and disappearing, an absent presence. Though few of us have seen it or consciously attach importance to it, this door in its historical connectedness was the point of departure, not only physical departure, but psychic rending of our ancestors. Leaving, to leave, left, language can be deceptive. The moment when they left the old world and entered the new, forced to leave, one would have to have a destination in mind. Of course, one could rush out of a door with no destination in mind, but to rush or to leave would suggest some self-possession. Rushing would suggest a purpose with some urgency, some reason. They're taking too might suggest a benevolence. So no, it was not taking. So having not left, having no destination, having no self-possession, no purpose and no urgency, their departure was unexpected. And in the way that some unexpected events can be horrific, their leaving, or rather their taking, was horrific. What language would describe that loss of bearings or the sudden awful liability of one's own body? The hitting, or the whipping, or the driving, which was shocking, the dragging and the bruising it involved, the epidemic sickness with life, which would become hereditary, and the antipathy, which would shadow all subsequent events. The door looms both as a horror and a romance, though. The horror is, of course, 300 or 400 years of slavery. Its shadow was and is colonialism and racism. The romance is of the place beyond the door, the Africa of our origins. Some of us reinvent these origins as a golden past of serenity, grandeur, equality. As one living in a state of dread invents its opposite for sustenance. Invention aside, any past without slavery would be golden. Some would simply like the relief of its existence, its continuity, rather, its simple connection as a touchstone to our present. This door is the place of the fall.